have you just seen a 144 Hz monitor and now your 60 Hz monitor feels like lagging? Well, lower those settings and increase that body count, because we're going to do some benchmarking and get some 144 Hz action. So first up, we have a little bit of a boot benchmark, about 32 seconds to actually load up the game. So that is with a PM961 NVMe SSD drive, so a pretty fast SSD, so pretty fast boot times. And basically what we're going to see is we've overclocked the cards, they're factory overclocked between 3 and 5% already, and then we added another 8% to the base boost, and then the actual memory clock as well, and then only about 5% on the 2060. So we have 4 different cards we're going to benchmark, and these are the prices, and this is what we got them for. And this is DX12 and then GeForce 419.67 drivers. So let's jump into some of the actual benchmark here. We did a quick little graph, and we'll start off with the 1060, which got around 125 FPS. This was at the lowest settings, so this is minimum latency as well, so they pretty much lowered all the settings down really low. And here they are in the actual video. We're just showing real quick what we used. And again, DX12, and then we'll jump to actually see some performance at 1022. So we get to see again around the 125 FPS mark, and we're seeing a 1949 boost clock for the GPU, and then we're seeing around 45% CPU usage, and then it jumps up with each card we upgrade to because the GPU is the bottleneck right now. And again, we're seeing 80 Celsius temperatures, 66% fan curve, around 3000 on the memory, so that's the usage for that. And this is going to jump from about a 16% increase up to the 1660. We see a little bit of a FPS increase by about 20 there, and we see actually performance at 855. And these are benchmarks we've run twice. This is in the Halvdeller area. We tested another area of the map too. We'll get to that in a minute though. And this is just a run back and forth. The action was so quick it was hard to get actual fights to last a good amount for a benchmark and then repeat that. It was really insane, so we just straight up did some run throughs. And we're seeing around a 1995 megahertz on the boost clock, and then we're seeing it jumps up from 45 to 50% usage roughly. CPU usage, we're seeing some differences there. And then we're getting 73 Celsius, 70% fan curve, and then we're getting around 2600 on the memory, so that is pretty good there. And then we get to jump up to the 1660 Ti, and we're jumping about another 20 or so FPS, which is a 13% increase, and we get to see this at 643. We'll leave a link for this actual video if you want to check out the whole thing. It's kind of running back and forth. I think there might be a death or two in here, but this is going to boost pretty high, 2025, sometimes 2040. It's ticking back and forth there. This is the boost clock on the GPU, and then we're seeing again up to the CPU about to 55% usage. This is a 9900K overclocked 5 gigahertz, and then we see 72 Celsius, 79% fan curve, and then 2500 on the memory usage. And then we get to jump to the very last card, the most expensive out of these 4, and this is a 10% increase from 164 to 181 FPS. And here's your 1% low FPSs. So these 3 cards will get around the same 1% low, but you'll get different, you'll be able to maybe up some settings to medium, some textures or whatever you want to change a little bit, and you'll still be well above 144 Hertz FPS gameplay, but the 1060 didn't quite make it. And we can jump into some performance for the 2060 is at 503. We'll leave a timestamp in this video too, also for the description if you want to check that out more. And this is boosting to about 1950 megahertz on the GPU clock, and then we're seeing again jumped up for CPU usage of 60% because obviously the GPUs are the bottleneck again. 74 Celsius temperature, 67% fan curve, 2600 memory. So pretty good cards. You'll get pretty much 144 FPS on the 3 higher end cards. The 1060 is around 210 to 150 depending on if you can get a deal or not. The 1660 again goes for around 220, and then you can get 10% off rebate codes, so it's around 208 is what we found it for. So around similar prices, but you do have to jump up about $50 for the Ti version, and then another $70. So it'll be depending on what's worth it to you. So pretty good there. You'll definitely be wanting to look at a 1660 if you're looking at some increase for FPS in low settings and that high refresh rate. So pretty good all around graphics cards. And we also have another little benchmark. We did a bunch more testing on the actual 2060 card. So here's the two different areas we tested. The half dollar area, this is a very, very popular zone to drop into, and then we're on the southeast side of the river. And basically we're seeing again 180, 181. This was the second test we did, so 1 FPS difference. And then the Halvoy Dam was 177 FPS, so pretty much similar from bottom of the map to top of the map. We didn't test really any snowy areas. We could have done some extra testing there. But if you want to jump up to ultra settings and just play with some of the best settings possible, you'll still get around 120 FPS. 119 is what we saw on the 2060. So you'll still get some good performance there. You could maybe tune a couple more settings to get a little bit more and not dip down to that 78%, 1% low. So that is there. And then we did a test on a 3840 by 1080p monitor. So two monitors basically slammed together. If you're like that, that's 111 FPS. DirectX ray tracing we also tested. This is the first time we messed around with that. We got about a 120 FPS running around. We were near, again, the Halvoy Delver area, which has some water reflections and a little bit of light going on there. So we did see stuttering. So there's like half-second freezes almost. So we did see some issues with that. And then we did DXR with DLSS. We only really saw a 10% performance increase. So we might have to play with that some more. Usually you'll get better performance, but we also saw with the deep learning super sampling, it was very blurry even in the starter areas. It was it seems like it needs to be updated a little bit more, some more learning for that. And in the launch bay, basically when the red lights went on before you jumped, there was a ton of straight patterned lines like a zebra. So there's a lot of issues with that. Definitely turn that off. Even if you're using ray tracing, it wasn't too big of a performance difference. So not too good on the DLSS for first experiences for the TechCaboose. And then DXL11, we also had some issues with this. It was only using around 55% CPU usage in the Royale map. Again, the same bench 30-second stretch. It was weird. We didn't go too much into it to figure out what the issue was, but it was only 111 FPS. Again, only half of the GPU was being used, so it would have been much higher, but we didn't quite figure out that issue with that. So that is your benchmarks. We have a couple other Battlefield 5 news things to go over though really quick. So here is some system requirements that they recommend for competitive play. They actually recommend the RTX 2060, an even more expensive graphics card, but we got away with that low settings and high FPS anyways, even without it. And they recommend an 8700 processor, so we jumped up from the 8700K to the 9900K, so 8700 sounds pretty reasonable. And 16 gigs of RAM, and we get to actually see a roadmap. This was announced a couple of days ago, but we might as well talk about it in a benchmarking video because this is upcoming content. So March 25th is when we saw Firestorm. This was a couple of days ago. The benchmark was on day 3, and then some of the extra testing was done on day 4. So, but we redid the 1 FPS test anyway, so it wasn't really that big of a difference. And we get to see April, we're going to see Combined Arms new missions. May we'll get to see new maps. June, a new mode outpost, so some cool stuff coming for Battlefield 5. And we'll get to see a little bit of Chapter 4 stuff coming in June. New maps and modes again, more maps, even more maps. So that is, we don't even have a picture for this one, it's kind of blurred out there. And then we even get a Chapter 5 title coming out in fall 2019. So this is Awakening the Giants, all-out invasion in a new theater of war. So even less details on Chapter 5, but lots of roadmap details here. A little bit of roadmap cards basically is what we're seeing. So that is good. And we're also seeing duos come to the Battle Royale mode, Trial by Fire, in April, it looks like, part of Chapter 3. So we'll see more Firestorm action and some more reveals. There's some mystery fire sites. Some people have done speculation on what all of this is about, but it could get more interesting as if they release more, when they release more content. So pretty good there. And that does it for the Battlefield 5 Royale benchmark. Some good stuff, some good choices between graphics cards on the absolute lowest settings if you want that competitive edge at 144 FPS. So it capped at 200 FPS, so you're not really going to go for that 240 Hz monitor, but 144 seems pretty reasonable on a mid-tier card. So go NVIDIA, I guess. And with that, we have Frank saying all aboard, choo choo, right back at you. And we will have another episode tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific with some more tech and games. We're a little bit late today because benchmarking had some issues here and there, and we'll be signing out. Pew 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 pew.